Hello, welcome to another episode of New Gameplay. Today I'm your host, Jeff Gork, joined today by Matt Miller.
Hello there.
Hello, Alex Stepnick.
Hello, Jeff. How are you?
I'm fine. What are we playing here?
We are playing 13 Sentinels from Atlas and Miller. Who is the other developer?
Vanillaware is the developer behind this game. Atlas is publishing. Vanillaware is the folks who brought us games like Odin Sphere and Dragon's Crown. They have a very particular art style that I think people who are fans can recognize right away. It's a sort of hand-drawn look that's particularly striking, both for the characters and their backgrounds that they move through. And that whole art style, that whole aesthetic is definitely carried forward into this game.
Now, you wouldn't necessarily know it just by looking at it, but I'm told there are giant robots somewhere in this game.
Somewhere.
Okay. This is a really strange game. It's the first thing I'm going to say to you guys about it. I've played some. Alex, you've now had time to play some, right?
I've played about 2 hours, I'd say, of the prologue, and it definitely, I needed all 2 hours to to grasp what was happening and what the structure of this was.
It's a very unusual game, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but I think anybody who starts to play it, you're going to be like, what is even happening right now? You've got the 13 Sentinels idea. There are 13 protagonists in this game, and you're going to follow each one of their stories separately and move back and forth between them throughout the course of gameplay.
So take that, Octopath Traveler.
I was going to say.
Right, man. And the stories are all interconnected, but they're told in a non-linear way. And that non-linear nature is confused by, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, it's confused by the fact that there's also time travel at play here between multiple time periods, not just like 2, but like 4 or 5 or 6 different times that these characters are moving through. And so you have times where, okay, am I seeing this character now in the future, but it's before they showed up in the past? And they don't always tell you that. You're meant to, the whole point of the game is you're kind of piecing that stuff together over the course of play. And so they kind of like, what we're watching right now is a sequence of the prologue with one of those protagonists. And in these early prologue sequences, you kind of get a little portion of one of the character's stories, and then you get a kind of a battle sequence, which we'll talk about when we get to it. But the battles are when you're in the big giant robots, and it's sort of handled in this abstract map structure is how it's played.
Yeah.
And you're meant to be moving back and forth between the battles and these story sequences and slowly figuring out what the heck is going on. And I'll tell you, I'm hours in, and I do not know what is going on.
I wasn't even sure if like the battle sequences were real, like in the storyline, or something they were all like imagining. My head was spinning. I've never played a game like this before.
And in some ways, I think that it's simultaneously for some people is going to be like a hard out. Like, nope, I'm not interested in that kind of shenanigans. I think for other people, it's going to be the thing that really captures the imagination about this game. Each of the characters is very distinct one from another, and they've clearly gone to a lot of pains to give them each their own kind of personalities and even their own sort of tropes that they pursue within the fictional framework, right? I mean, there's one of them that is very much like a spy story, like you're a spy and you're undercover. There's another one where it's like you're an amnesiac who kind of the classic like JRPG thing. The one that we're doing right now is this girl who it's almost beat for beat like an ET kind of a story, right? Okay. Where she meets this little robot thing who she even sort of obliquely references ET without using the actual name of the movie. To the idea that she's seen that movie and she wants to kind of live out that fantasy herself, and she's kind of like going through it. And so each of them are totally different, but constantly interconnecting with each other. And so you see characters who just 20 minutes earlier, you might have been playing their story sequence, and you'll catch like the end of a conversation that you're really curious about with that other character, but you're not going to get to see that conversation play out for maybe 2 hours, right? Because you're along a different path at that moment.
So like this guy with the suspicious look to him, we'll find out maybe in another character's story what's going on.
Exactly.
Okay.
In terms of gameplay, I mean, like these story sequences are almost don't have gameplay. You can kind of see as Alex is navigating us through this stuff that there's this kind of thought cloud, is what they call it, where in between conversations you can call up what your current character is thinking about related to a particular subject. And sometimes thinking about that thing is what carries it forward, right? Like that's what gives you the like, oh, okay, now I need to go and do this thing. Other times it's literally just walking up to a person and hitting the button to talk a couple of times. And that's the thing that changes stuff and that moves you forward. There is the sense that eventually there might be a couple of like choices that you make.
For sure.
But
I've got a question, Miller.
Yeah.
Is this a horny game?
I think as we're about to see here, there is some stuff that is not entirely uncommon in like Japanese anime, where like we see this character like, oh, there's kind of like a tease that she's going to take her clothes off, but then she doesn't. I think the game always sort of stops short of going into especially creepy or M-rated territory in that regard, at least from what I've seen of it so far. But I think it's going to be it's always been an aspect of Vanillaware's games, and I think in particular there's going to just be some players who don't like that. I mean, it's weird. I mean, in that like a lot of the characters are clear that these are meant to be like high school freshmen, really, right? And so like the idea that they're even kind of flirting with sort of sexual teasing and that kind of stuff is a little bit is more than a little bit weird,
uncomfortable.
Yeah. But I haven't seen anything in the game so far that indicates that it goes into particularly gross territory. But I don't know. I'm not that far yet. But I think even this, what we just saw, it would be an indication of something that's like, I think for a lot of people, just be like, I don't want to play that kind of a game.
Yeah.
Which I think is totally fair. But you can kind of see what's happening with the sort of thought cloud stuff here, where sometimes she's considering stuff, but sometimes she's putting a particular point to one of the other characters in the story. And that's kind of all there is to these story sequences. They sort of play out, and it's like a visual novel, really, with some really cool art, some great, hand-drawn like lighting effects, and this very particular style that Vanillaware has always been known for. And then that's juxtaposed against what we're going to get to next, which is these battle sequences where you're in a giant robot.
Yeah, let's check out the giant robot stuff.
I love it. Let's do it.
All right, this is that combat you were threatening us with.
Yeah, right. So we're taking a look at the other half, really, of what this game is about. You've got these long story sequences that are largely sort of structured from beginning to end. There's not a lot of like ways you can change it with very few exceptions. But then you have these like strategy combat sequences that are all told in this kind of abstract map way, with these pop-up characters providing dialogue. And here is, if you will, kind of the meat of the gameplay, is that you're controlling each of the 13 protagonists has their own Sentinel, which is a giant like mechanized robot that they hop into.
You're only telling part of the story. They hop into the Sentinel.
Yes, well, you didn't give me enough time. They hop into the Sentinel, and for mysterious reasons, they all have to take their clothes off.
Yes.
I
just wanted to make sure you didn't skirt your way around that.
No. I think that is definitely a thing that they call out early.
It's one of the
all of the character portraits reflect that.
Yeah. I was gonna say they call, like you said, they called it at the start, and I was playing this, and my girlfriend was like getting ready for the day, and she was looking at it like, what's happening on your screen right there? Where are their clothes? I was like, I don't know, man.
Listen, you just can't
around girls.
Yeah.
You just can't be in a giant robot with your clothes on, I guess.
I mean, it would be restrictive, I imagine.
Regardless of our thoughts on that subject, that is what it is, and you then proceed to blow up these sort of kaiju robotic monster things that are attacking the city.
Yes.
Each of the Sentinels has their own power set, which over time you gain the ability to customize and to grow and upgrade, all that kind of good stuff. Initially here, we're still in the prologue, which is what we're able to show in this preview, and so there's, it's kind of just showing you stuff you can do.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a degree to which you're managing the different types of enemy units. So, like, for instance, if there's an aerial group of units, you often need to use one of your characters to use an EMP to drop those enemies down onto the ground so that your ground-based melee units can go and beat them up. So there's kind of like a teamwork vibe there.
Yeah.
That's going on. Each of the different types of kaiju that attacks has their own things that they're trying to do, and so you have to start learning the vocabulary of each one of them and how they might try to harm you. And you're always kind of protecting these terminals. And you can't let them take the terminal.
Yeah, it's very tower defense in that way.
Very tower defense focused. Yeah, I mean, up to the point that I've seen, most of the battles have been relatively straightforward, but I can see the implication of some higher complexity slowly emerging over time. I think one of the strange choices that the game makes is to have everything be in this kind of especially abstract presentation style, right?
Okay.
You only ever see the Sentinels in sort of concept art that pops up when you select a particular type of action that you're going to do. So you can see that right now, like, there's your Sentinel. If he selects an action, it's going to show, where that action is coming from on the Sentinel.
Yeah.
But it's all pretty, like, I don't know.
Gotta use your imagination.
Yeah.
You've got to use your imagination. That's a good way of describing it. Which is, again, I think going to be one of those things that for some people is like, I don't like that. Like, I wanted to see some big mechs, like, fighting some big kaiju, and you don't really get that vibe from the game. But I do think you start to get more combatants on screen over time, and more flexibility for the types of attacks that you're going to do and defenses that you're going to put out. And you can start having sentry units that you put in place in particular spots on the map.
Yeah.
You also have this thing on the bottom, the meta gauge, that slowly builds up as you do stuff during the battle, and that lets you do. Right now, Alex only has a very limited. I think there's only maybe one thing that he can do from that right now, which is some sort of EMP burst, perhaps.
Yeah, I can bring it up in a second here.
But eventually, there's more of those options that you can trigger from. There's sort of like global effects on the battle is what happens, and you unlock more of those over time. So I'm willing to kind of withhold judgment, I think, at this point on how much I enjoy the battles. In the early hours, though, it's all pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And again, like we talked about before, there's an element of it that's like, what's going on? I don't even know when this fight is happening, right? Or is this a real thing, or is this in the past for these characters?
Right.
I don't know. All that stuff remains kind of part of the mystery that you're unfolding as you play through the game.
Interesting.
For sure.
Well, maybe we'll never know, guys. Maybe we'll never, ever know.
Can't
When
do
is this
that.
game coming out?
13 Sentinels comes out on September 22nd for PlayStation 4. One interesting note is that what we've been playing today has all Japanese voiceover, but they have promised English voiceover with a day one patch. And so you should be able to have your choice of how you play it when the game is actually out. For us, whether we like it or not, we are playing with subtitles on.
There you go.
There it is.
Well, thanks for showing the game and talking all about it and all that good stuff. We do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.
Shut up and let me listen to the game! Oh, pardon me. I was just brainstorming a really good comment. Subscribe to Game Informer's YouTube for new episodes of new gameplay today every single week. We are proud of them, and we have fun making them. Thanks!